we've said it about you, and I know you'll probably disagree maybe to a certain extent, but I think the greatest thing that ever happened to you was that getting kicked out of the Comedy Store. That period of time where you had to reevaluate yourself. But I think as comics, we look at you reinventing yourself and reimagining yourself and making it your own fucking entity and creating this podcast, which has changed all of our lives. That moment, and it must have been tough to lose your agent, get kicked out of the Comedy Store, and have to figure things out, that we all got behind, everyone got behind you. Everyone was like, that's my guy.
Bobby Lee is having the best month of his career. A comedy special in the can, a new game show with Santino, and reportedly a new girlfriend who happens to be Tom Segura's ex-wife. Bold move. But none of that is why this clip matters. What actually stopped me mid-scroll was 4 minutes buried inside his Club Shay Shay appearance because Shannon Sharpe, without even knowing what he was doing, accidentally got Bobby Lee to say something about Joe Rogan that he has never said on a podcast before. Said outright. And once you hear it, the entire Rogan-Mencia story you think you know falls apart. Quick refresher for anyone late to this. Rogan exposed Carlos Mencia for stealing jokes. Mencia lost his agent, got banned from the Comedy Store, and Rogan walked away from the whole thing as a truth teller who then built an empire. That's the version everyone's been told for 20 years. It's also incomplete. Bobby Lee was standing closer to this story than almost anyone alive, and what he reveals here reframes Rogan not as the guy who exposed a villain, but as a guy with his own agenda. Stick around.
This is what happened. Okay, so, okay.
Shannon Sharpe has no idea what he just stumbled into. Somebody on his production team clearly Googled controversial comedy topics, handed him a card, and told him to ask about joke stealing. Bertcast has actually confirmed this. Shannon's team mines Reddit threads for questions, and he just fires them off blind. You can tell because 30 seconds later he asks, completely straight-faced, "So Joe and Carlos actually hate each other?" Like this is breaking news to him. But that's exactly why this interview works. Nobody's performing for the cameras. And what most people miss is this. Bobby wasn't some bystander in the Mencia saga. Mencia discovered him, put him on the road, paid his bills, bought him a car. This wasn't mentorship. This was Carlos Mencia building Bobby Lee's entire career from scratch. And people forget how big Mencia actually was. A hit Comedy Central show, sold out arenas, a real A-lister. Which is exactly why what he did was so damaging. When you're at the top and everyone still lets you get away with it, that's not a mistake. That's a system. Guys like Mencia operated on one rule. I'm the star, so if I improve your joke, it's mine now. That entitlement is the actual root of this entire scandal. And I'll come back to that later because it's bigger than one guy.
You know, we're getting roasted.
What is that? I don't know what that is. That's Ned Holmes.
Oh, I know Ned Holmes. Yeah, he's really good. Hey, that's all that stuff.
That's good?
Hey! I did all that stuff, you know what I mean? Yeah, Ned.
Do a couple minutes of his material.
Well, I'll just do some of my material and then it'll be the same. And then this is what happened, right?
Hey, I'm Bobby Lee. I've known Carlos Mencia about 11 years. I've been opening for him since the 90s. He's one of my best friends, and I've never seen him steal a joke. He never stole a joke from me. And
It was like, you know.
Let that sink in for a second. That's not a throwaway comment. That's a public confession on one of the biggest platforms in podcasting. Bobby still clearly loves Carlos. You can hear it in his voice. But when Rogan's star started rising, Bobby made a calculated career decision to distance himself from his own mentor. He's touched on this before, but never with this much honesty about his own guilt. And that guilt, 20 years later, still sitting there, tells you everything about how conflicted he still is about picking a side.
You know what I mean? From the beginning.
Now, I'm not here to canonize Bobby Lee either. I've called him out before. Mid-50s, still building bits around exposing himself on stage, still cornering random news anchors for bits that land somewhere between cringe and chaos. That needs to stop. But here's the pattern with Bobby that's undeniable. He keeps getting pulled into other people's wars. The Mencia fallout, the Shay Ken situation, where he was reportedly pressured into silence about Kalila's past, getting physically beaten up by Ari Shaffir. Bobby Lee is comedy's Forrest Gump, always in the room when history happens, rarely the one causing it. And that's exactly the pattern that plays out again here, as he gets caught up in Shannon's momentum and drops a detail about Rogan that goes back before any of the joke stealing ever started.
Piece, 3 hours apiece.
And they did that every night. And there was like,
Mitzi just let him go?
yeah, there was
Why?
like 4 or 5 of them
That
that were
seems
like
very
that.
bizarre that she would let him do that.
I remember one time Rogan and I, Eddie Griffin went up for hours, and Rogan and I were in the not the lobby, but out in the patio.
Like one time, you and I were at the Comedy Store. We're in the patio, and Eddie Griffin bumped us, right? And we were talking shit.
So this must be early days.
Early days, back in the day.
90s, right?
90s.
He would go on at 9 o'clock, and your spot would be at 9:15, and he would do 3 hours.
I mean, it was him. Dice would do it sometimes. Mencia would do it all the
Mencia
time.
did
Oh
it
my
all the
god!
time.
Oh my god!
Yeah, but it was the thing is, it was kind of the culture of the Comedy Store. In Eddie's defense, is that if you reach a certain level of fame, and at the time Eddie was definitely more famous than us.
I mean, you can't to think Joe Rogan, what he is now. You know what I mean? But they used to do it to him.
At the store, when you reached a certain level of prominence, you were allowed to just do whatever the fuck you wanted, and people would show up. And apparently, Kinnison used to do that, and a lot of guys used to do that.
But do hours?
I get it, man. I don't agree with it.
You wouldn't do it?
No, but there's certain guys did. Certain guys that are really good did. Chappelle did it. There's a bunch of guys who did it. It was a thing that you're allowed to do there.
These things, yeah.
Listen to how Bobby actually frames this. I think it's a resentment that stems from the beginning. He's not trying to excuse what Mencia did. He's saying something else was already broken between Rogan and Mencia long before joke stealing was ever the story. Some kind of personal beef going back to when Rogan first landed in LA. Nobody knows exactly what it was over. Could have been a woman. Could have been a game of pool that got out of hand. But here's what you need to understand about Rogan that people conveniently leave out. This is a guy whose whole psychology is built on competition. Taekwondo background, hyper-tribal, hyper-ambitious. And when Rogan doesn't get what he wants, the bully switch flips. He was grinding on Fear Factor, not yet the stand-up star he wanted to be, while Mencia sat at the top, acting like he owned the building. That's not a coincidence. That's a target being built in real time.
It doesn't fit the crime.
And here's the part that makes this bulletproof. This isn't just Bobby's word. Bobby, Santino, and Rogan himself have all independently confirmed the same story across 3 separate podcasts over 7 years. In the 90s, the Comedy Store ran on a caste system. Mencia, Dice, Eddie Griffin, they drop in and eat 2-3 hours of stage time, knowing it buried everyone below them on the lineup. And management let it happen because those names sold tickets. Now stack that on top of the entitlement mindset. Guys who genuinely believed they were owed whatever material they wanted because they'd earned the right. Put yourself in Rogan's shoes, grinding every single night, cutting the fat out of his set, still not breaking through, while Mencia sits comfortably at the top, taking whatever he wants with 0 consequences. That's not jealousy, that's motive. And once you see the resentment building across an entire generation of comics, Rogan wasn't the only guy with a grudge. He was just the one who finally acted on it. And here's where it gets genuinely wild. The way Rogan executed this was borderline ruthless. A hidden camera, no consent, total ambush. The guy running that camera was Brian Redban, who went on to co-found JRE, got phased out for young Jamie, then built Kill Tony with Tony Hinchcliffe. Failing upward doesn't even begin to cover that career arc. Here's the irony nobody talks about. Rogan actually got banned from the Comedy Store for filming inside the club without permission. Fast forward to the mothership in Austin today, phones get sealed in bags at the door. If someone tried Rogan's exact move in that room now, they wouldn't survive the parking lot. So really, All Rogan did was tear down one hierarchy just to build an identical one, with himself on top. And notice, Rogan hasn't called out a single joke thief since, especially the ones he's close with. I've already documented how he lifted a premise from Schwab's Gringo Poppy himself, and on Patreon, I broke down exactly how Tony Hinchcliffe recycled several jokes in his own Netflix special with zero fallout. Bobby's not wrong about the double standard, and honestly, this is the real thesis of the whole video. Robin Williams did this exact thing for decades and never lost a single gig over it. Meanwhile, modern comics get accused and some of them get put in comedy prison for a year or two if they're unlucky enough not to be protected. Most just get quietly ignored and Rogan's circle moves on like nothing happened. And Mencia is the real case study in why this never resolves. 20 years later, still no real apology, still no accountability. Bobby tried to rehabilitate him on Tiger Belly, gave him a real platform to make it right, and Carlos still couldn't bring himself to say sorry. That's the exact same entitlement that got him canceled in the first place, completely undisturbed by 2 decades of consequences. And that's the part that should actually bother you. This isn't a relic of the 90s. It's just rebranded now, with better PR and more protection. Bobby Lee sat inside this story for 20 years, and this is the first time he's laid out the whole thing. And even after all that, there's still more nobody said publicly. The real through line here is Rogan's hunger to break through. An insanely competitive guy forced to sit outside while Mencia burned 3 hours of stage time like he owned it. That's not backstory. That's the origin story of everything Rogan became. If this connected the dots for you, smash the like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because this saga isn't close to over.